On this episode, we talk to an expert on gay rights in Thailand to get the lowdown on a very complicated issue.
So, if you've ever wondered if Thailand really is a gay paradise, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who has lived through 2 coups in Thailand, which is 200% more coups than I lived through in Canada.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand 18 years ago, was shocked at the price of Pop-Tarts, and has been waiting for them to come down ever since.
That imported candy will get you, man.
No doubt.
So right off the bat, we want to say a quick thank you to all of our patrons who support the show, but one in particular, a guy by the name of Sam Decker, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about gay rights in Thailand to hear why all the signs point to Sam being a stern and uncompromising cyborg.
Ooh, that's a little scary.
Yeah, it is a little scary, but you know, dude's from New York. What are you going to do? And speaking of patrons, one of the cool things that our patrons like Sam get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about a lot of other stuff. It's a bit more personal, a bit less structured, but never boring. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about the economy in a roundabout way, talking about all of the relative value of stuff, including a few things in Bangkok that should be cheaper than they are, and a few other things that are way, way overpriced.
Like wine, for example. That is way overpriced. Yeah.
Also, before we start, I want to say apologies if I cough or sound weird. I'm fighting off a cold right now. I think I got about an hour left of talking to me before my larynx pops out of my mouth. The plus side of this is that my voice sounds really cool.
It does. It does.
I do like talking like that.
Anyway, on this episode, I interview Thanita Ninar Wongprasert on the topic of gay rights in Thailand. Ninar is a former student of mine who's been involved with various organizations over the years fighting for equal rights for the LGBTQI community in Thailand. Now, you may remember, especially patrons, a few weeks back in a bonus episode, Greg and I discussed essentially speculatively about what it's like to be gay in Thailand. But at that time, we vowed to bring an expert on the show to discuss the issue properly. And when Greg and I make a promise, we deliver.
That's right, baby.
And so, without further ado, I give you our expert, my interview with Thanita Wongprasert. All right, welcome, listeners. I'm here with another former student of mine. Her name is Thanita Wongprasert. Her nickname is Ninar, so I'm going to call her Ninar in this for this interview. And I've mentioned before on the podcast that one of the cool things about being a teacher at a Thai university is all the amazing students I get to meet. Listeners out there, if you listen to our previous podcast with Mook Ishimura, you've already met one of my former students. And so today we're here with Ninar, another of my former students, and we're going to talk about LGBTQI issues in Thailand. Some of you guys might remember on one of our bonus episodes a couple weeks ago, Greg and I were just chatting about being gay in Thailand, and we realized it was kind of silly for 2 straight expats to talk about it, since we don't really know what the hell we're talking about. So we promised to get an expert, and so Ninar is going to be our expert. So Ninar, can you give our listeners just a little bit of background information on yourself?
Yes, sure. Like Ed just said, I was a former student at BAS, but not just only a student, because I think during my second year, I started to join Thailand's NGOs who works for LGBTI rights issues. And since then, I never stopped, really. And after my graduation, I I joined the British Embassy, but not really regarding LGBTI rights. But I still do it part-time. Like I kept it on my side. And then I joined the UNDP, being LGBTI in Asia.
So what is that? Can you explain what the UNDP is?
Okay, so that's the United Nations Development Program, and they have a regional program dedicated to advance the right of LGBTIQ persons in Asian Pacific, basically. And I joined their team, and currently I am now just a master degree student studying international development studies. But having said that, still I chose LGBTIQ rights as my part of my thesis and my main thesis.
I see. So you're studying at Chulalongkorn University, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now you're getting a master's in development, but your focus is still LGBTQI issues, basically.
Yes. I have this specific focus on the laws regarding like same-sex marriage or civil partnership.
Okay.
So the laws to protect, legal protection. It's like a legal recognition of same-sex partnership.
Sure. So this is something that we talked about in class. So it's kind of cool. For me, it's cool to see you kind of carry on with this issue. It's great. Now, some of our listeners might not be familiar with this terminology, and I got to be honest. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep up with different terms. So LGBTIQ. So L stands for lesbian, G stands for gay, T stands for
transgender.
I stands for intersex. Is that correct?
Yes, intersex. You
right.
must be bisexual.
And then Q stands for queer. Is that correct?
Yes, queer.
Can you explain to our listeners what the word, what queer means?
Okay, so there are different people interpret queer differently, but for me, and I think for the UN standards, we consider queer as someone who has no fixed gender identity.
Okay.
Okay. So LGBTI, they have fixed gender identity. Like they look masculine, they look feminine, but for queer, they are kind of in between.
Okay. So before we get into the legal kind of rights issues, which, as you know, is something that I'm interested in as well. Before we get into that, I want to kind of talk in general about how Thai culture views gay people. So I mentioned before the podcast when you and I were chatting, for me, one of the mysteries of Thailand as a foreigner, trying to understand Thailand, one of the kind of mysteries is, on the one hand, I think Thailand presents itself as a conservative country, and it's very common for Thai people, especially older Thai people, they will describe Thailand as a conservative Buddhist country. It's a pretty standard way to describe Thailand. So that's like one way to look at Thailand. But then, I've been here 18 years, and I know that in some other ways, Thailand does not seem very conservative. To a certain extent, prostitution is at least tolerated. I know that sex outside of marriage, while it might not be considered right, is also often tolerated. I know that the whole second wife thing, the minor wife thing, is not as popular as it used to be. There's no doubt about that. But I think it still exists. I mean, I don't think it's rare in Thailand for a guy to have a minor wife. I don't think that's rare. Not as popular as it used to be. So for me, it's kind of hard to understand. Like, is Thailand actually a conservative Buddhist country, or is it a country that actually might be kind of liberal when it comes to like sexual issues? Like, so how do you see it? Did you think of Thailand as a conservative country or a liberal country?
To be honest, I don't think as Thailand of anything, because Thailand is the name of the country. So, but I would answer this in terms of, Thai people. But then the thing is, there's no one group of Thai people. So I think the best way to answer these questions is to analyze, the word liberalism, or, about being progressive, right? I think that word is quite embedded in my generations. By the way, I'm 23, okay? But for my mom's generation, I would think it's the gray area between liberalism and conservatism. And then my mom's mom, I think that would be a better example of conservatism. And then again, are you talking about, ordinary citizens, or are you talking about policymakers or lawmakers in Thailand? Because if you, for example, if you, go to university and you pick someone, the students, asking about, LGBTIQ, I'm pretty sure, I'm very positive that they are going, the majority of them, the people that you interview there, are going to give you a positive views and perspective of LGBTI. But if you walk down, in the parliament, and then you mention the word LGBTIQ, I can imagine that, some of them might not even know what they stand for. And they are people who make laws, make decisions, who provide legal protections, who provide, social protection for these people who sometimes are considered as marginalized and vulnerable citizens of the country.
Okay, so I find that very interesting because on the podcast, our podcast is basically expats trying to live in Thailand and trying to be respectful of Thai culture, but also try to understand the culture that we're living in, so one of the issues for the podcast is trying to figure out what's really different in Thailand and what's really the same. Obviously we're all human beings. Thai people are human beings, and so when you say this, when you talk about your generation, your parents, and your grandparents, to me I don't think that's unique to Thailand. I think that's just the way it is. And young people, I do tend to be more progressive. So that makes it sound like this issue might be a generational issue, and it might not really be about Thai culture. Does that make sense?
I see where you stand. Yes, I see. But then I, to be honest with you, with Thailand, I've lived in Thailand my whole life, and I cannot come up with the decision whether or not Thailand is liberal or conservative. It's not one way or another. It's like a switch. The example would be my mom, and regarding this topic. With my mom, I never came out to her, but she's very supportive of me, and she knows who I am and my gender identity and sexual orientation. But at the same time, in that sense, she's very liberal. I don't even need to tell her, and she supports me. But, for example, if we have a house party and we have the cousins coming in or her customer coming in, she would switch to a bit more conservative because she does not know what kind of perception she would get from those people.
Interesting. Like I said, to me, I think that exact same thing could happen in the States. I think this could be, might be a generational thing where parents, obviously in general, support their children, but they also might be worried about what their friends think or what other people think. So that to me sounds pretty generational. So I've got another question also about Thai culture. And this is something that we've talked a little bit on the podcast before. Everyone knows that Thai culture is, I guess the word would be non-confrontational, especially compared to the West. I know it's a bit of a cliche and it's not always true, but, in general, Westerners tend to be more direct. And I think Asians and especially Thai people tend to be a little bit more indirect and not confrontational. And so one of the mysteries I've had about this LGBTIQ issue in Thailand is that since Thai people basically are not confrontational, they don't get in people's faces so much, that it might be easier to be gay in Thailand just because Thai people are kind of nice. They're nice people. But that doesn't actually mean they accept homosexuality. It's just kind of the style. It's like in the States, obviously things are getting more liberal. But, if you're gay in the States, you have to kind of be careful where you go and what you say because you might get beat up. Like if you're a gay guy and you end up in the wrong bar at the wrong time, depending on where you are, it's like you're going to be confronted. Like someone is going to get in your face and point a finger at you. You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit dangerous, in the States, depending on where you are, of course. It totally depends on where you are. But I feel in Thailand that Thai people just generally leave people alone. It's like it's less confrontational. But that's not the same thing as really accepting it. Is it often true that gay people in Thailand face direct discrimination?
It depends. It really depends. Yeah, it does happen. And I mean, I don't just mean it happens in Thailand, but anywhere. I mean, like you said, in the state, it would happen. It really depends on the
Of
kid.
course. Right. Well, I'm trying to figure out if Thailand is any different. That's kind of the thing. I think Thai people are nicer than Americans on average. Like, I think Thai people are nice. It's like they don't give other people a lot of shit. Like, they don't get in people's faces and challenge people as much. It's just not the style. It's not the cultural style. But I also want to get back to this point you said that when it comes to the government, you feel the government tends to be very old school or very conservative or very traditional. Is that correct?
Yes, like bureaucratic, basically.
But not progressive is what you're saying.
Not progressive as a whole. No. I mean,
So,
I can argue like there are certain ministry, like certain department that is very, very progressive. For example, if you can, for example, the Department of Right and Liberties, which falls under the Ministry of Justice, the department itself, their mission itself, it's really liberal. For example, trying to pass the civil partnership bill, for example. I mean, that is very progressive compared to the rest of Asian Pacific. That doesn't really mean that the whole government is totally progressive on this matter.
Okay, I want to come back. I want to come back to the legal issues, but I want to stay a little general for a minute. So the other thing I was curious about is, in the States, the cities tend to be more liberal than the country. So it's kind of a cliche, but the big cities in the U.S. are certainly more liberal than the countryside. And I'm curious, is it the same in Thailand? Like, if you're a lesbian or gay kid in Isan, do you think they think of Bangkok as a place where they're more likely to be accepted? Do they come to Bangkok because Bangkok is a liberal city? Is that part of Thai culture? Do they think that way?
Mm-hmm. I on this matter, I agree with you, because I think not just in Bangkok, but in like big and tourist cities, these cities tend to be, more culturally, I wouldn't say developed, but like more culturally westernized, and in a sense that, like if you come to Bangkok, you walk down, you can tell that this is a city of, cosmopolitan. People are more exposed to diversity, and it's not just in form of like multicultural, but also like even if it's plural monoculture, people in here in big cities, they try to not just to accept but try to understand where these people stand in society, what they come from and what do they want. Culturally are more open, I would think, because they are more exposed to diversity.
Okay, so this leads into the next question, which is, I think in general among international travelers, Thailand is looked at as a place that's pretty gay friendly. So I don't know if I'd call it a gay paradise, but I do think that in general, gay tourists and expats who are gay, they look at Thailand as a place where they will not be discriminated against. So now, again, it's a stereotype, it's a generalization. Is that true? Like, do you think, like, because I know you're fighting for the rights of Thai citizens, for same-sex marriage and things like that. Is it weird for you when you see how traditional the government is? Is it weird for you that foreigners look at Thailand as gay-friendly? And here you are fighting for rights, but foreigners think, oh, Thailand's so great for gay people. Like, is that weird?
No, it's not weird. I mean, even if you ask me and or other activists, we wouldn't deny that Thailand is not a gay paradise, but we would rephrase it in the way that Thailand has prospects of being a gay paradise.
My guess is that most expats, they just want to come someplace where no one is going to bother them. Like they could be like, maybe they live in a working class community in the West, and in their community at home, they face discrimination. So they figure when I come to Thailand, hey, people are going to leave me alone. So to them, it might already be a gay paradise, even though they don't necessarily have the right to get married.
I think for me, the word gay paradise, I can imagine it's the paradise definitely for the travelers. But I think if there are foreigners who are considering to come to settle in Thailand, of course the culture is nice, the environment is really nice for LGBTI people, but they also have to keep in mind, settling in Thailand, they need to take into account the legal issue as well. Because don't forget that, even though you live in Thailand and it's totally fine, the culture is so nice, but when you have problem or encounter problems, that's where you seek legal protections, yeah?
Oh, I love this point. This is something that I've told people before that, and even beyond this issue, the issue of like gay and lesbian rights, even beyond this issue, Thailand can often seem like a paradise. Like it's very popular with expats and travelers. But when something goes wrong, like when there's a problem, like if you get into a car accident and you want health insurance, and like Thailand can seem to be a paradise until something goes wrong. And like
exactly,
when
that's my point, yes. Mm-hmm. So
So this is a good segue into talking about rights issues. So let me ask you this: before we get to the issue of same-sex marriage, what is the status of gay rights in Thailand? Is there anything in the Constitution or Thai laws that specifically says gay and straight people have the same rights? Does that exist in Thailand?
Well, we don't have the law like that per se, but what we have now, and it's the latest law, the latest victory for LGBTI people, is that in 2015, there was the Gender Equality Act has been passed. So in that act, it includes the anti-discrimination against people in workplace and in other areas. So I think in that case, it's really good.
Let me ask. So it's gender equality. So gender equality at first just means that women and men have to be treated the same. But does that? I'm curious. Does that law specifically mention sexual orientation?
It mentions sexual orientation, but to be honest with you, the law is not. The law itself is good, but there are rooms for development in terms of gender equality. For example, if for me, gender equality would include like gender legal gender recognition. But now even transgender cannot change their gender on their ID card, for example.
I see. Okay,
even under that law.
Okay, so there might be a law that says in the workplace you cannot discriminate against gay people. So you've got some protection, some equality, but there are other issues. There are other issues such as formal recognition, yeah, right. So this issue happens in the States as well, where trans people want to change their gender on their driver's license or something like that. So yeah, we have similar issues. So let's get to the issue of same-sex marriage. So the first thing is, what I've noticed in Thailand is just a lot of Thai people sometimes get married, but they don't do the paperwork. So, and I've seen even in the news, like gay marriages. And so those gay marriages that I've seen in the news, those do not have paperwork. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. It's just a ceremony. It's just the wedding.
Okay. So culturally, in society, there are already gay marriages happening, but they're not technically legal. Can you fill us in? What is the status right now on the kind of struggle to get legal recognition for same-sex marriage? Like, so where is the battle right now?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so currently the Ministry of Justice is drafting civil partnership bill, and this is not the first one. I think this is the Ministry of Justice third drafting of legislation of civil partnership bills. They drafted the two, it weren't passed, and then there was one civil partnership bill from civil society organization that was drafted as well, but not none of them were passed yet. And currently they are drafting the third one.
So these are just bills that are being developed. But what is your opinion of the support? Like, does it look likely that it could pass? What is the feeling in the community?
The feeling in the community, you mean among the NGOs and activists, right?
Yeah.
The fact is they are not really happy with civil partnership.
So our listeners might not be aware, but in this same-sex marriage issue, there's kind of a compromise position. And this happened in the U.S. for a while, where there was a reluctance to grant 100% marriage rights. And so instead, they came up with this idea of, well, let's have another thing, like another legal status, and we're going to call it a civil partnership. So legally, it's not a marriage, quote unquote, but we'll have a separate thing called the civil partnership. And then the civil partnership can include either some or possibly even all the rights of marriage. And this was part of the legal struggle in the U.S. For a long time, where there were states that were drafting civil partnership laws, and it didn't really end until the U.S. Supreme Court basically said that gay people can get married under marriage laws, and so the civil partnership laws were not necessary. So in Thailand, it's kind of the same thing. So there's kind of this movement not to legalize same-sex marriage, but the movement is to allow a separate legal mechanism. So then in that case, the key issue then is whether or not the civil partnership laws give you the same rights as marriage. So NGOs are not happy with these laws, so they don't give you the same rights as marriage?
Exactly. And one more thing is that, this is the law that reflects on, equality and inclusion, right? So the NGO expect to be included in the process of drafting the bill.
I see.
Of course, the Ministry of Justice is the PMO of the project. But as an NGO, we want to contribute, our thoughts and inputs onto this legislation.
Let's say you get the bill you want, so you get the law you want. Do people think it will pass the legislative assembly? Like, will this government pass a partnership law? What do you think?
Well, the thing about this is that this government, okay, they have put it in their national human rights agenda, which is the government's formal way to say, like, we are committed to these issues, which is different from, previous 4 years.
They've already said that they want to grant civil partnership rights? They've already said that?
They said they are committed to do it, but they don't guarantee whether or not it will happen.
I see. Interesting. This is another weird thing about Thailand that is hard for me to understand sometimes is, with the various coup d'etats that have happened, in general, when you think of a military government, you think of something very conservative. The stereotype would be, oh my God, this is going to be horrible for gay rights if the military is in charge. But that's not always true in Thailand. Like the weird thing about Thailand is that sometimes when the military takes over, they do progressive stuff. Again, when I try to explain this to my Western friends, it's like I think one of the key differences is that really the Thai military, it's really like a political organization. It's like, because they've had their hand in politics so many times and they've run the government so many times. I mean, obviously they have a military function, but they're really political. And so it would be kind of ironic if a military government gave same-sex marriage rights, and then an elected democratic government never did that.
Exactly.
Now, but from your perspective, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't care where it comes from as long as you get the rights.
No, actually, speaking of, on behalf of the NGOs in general, okay, so there's one issue that comes when we talked about legal recognition, is that do we want it from the government who, deny democracy, for example?
So maybe from your perspective, it would be better if it came from a democratically elected government.
Yes, like came from the people, came from the, House representatives and senators that represent the interests of the people.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but there's supposed to be elections in February. So, it might work out that this civil partnership bill you mentioned, it might work out that it does not pass before the election anyway. So this might end up, we might, what is your prediction? Do you think an elected government will still be committed to make this change?
I think I have a faith in Thailand's NGOs that this would be something consistent.
Thai civil society is strong enough that
Very
you think
strong.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. That's
Very
really good
strong.
to hear. So you have you're pretty optimistic. So whether the military does it or whether an elected government does it, you think some form of same-sex marriage is coming to Thailand. You think so? Oh wow, that's great
Well,
news. I guess that's
as an activist, it's not good if we are pessimists all the time. It's good to be optimistic and have hope.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And I mean, it's fair if Thailand gets it. I mean, we deserve it, right? Thailand, we deserve it.
Of course, there's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Well, I guess that's kind of a positive note to end on. So, Ninar, I really just wanted to thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to us about this stuff.
Thank you, Ed.
Greg and I always joke that we believe in free speech, and so we like to talk about everything. But the bottom line is, a lot of times we don't know what we're talking about. And so, like someone like you with this background is kind of priceless. So our listeners can hear from a Thai person who's in the community, who's been fighting for these rights. It's a real good thing for our listeners. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you very much, you guys. Our pleasure.
So, dude, isn't it kind of weird that it's possible that same-sex marriage could become legal in Thailand under a dictatorship?
It's really fascinating, and this goes in line with what we've talked about in previous shows too, about how Thailand is making these sort of really out of character, strangely forward-thinking moves now, like the potential of legalizing marijuana, same-sex marriage. They're opening up the work permit laws, things like this. You cross your fingers and you hope it's all true, but at the same time, the back of your mind is like, I don't know about this.
Well, I'll tell you, man. If we get liberal work permit laws, same-sex marriage, and legal marijuana, okay, then I'm giving up on democracy, man. I'm going military dictatorship all the way.
This will be Southeast Asia's California.
I'm going what do we need democracy for? Look what we got.
That's right. Well, thanks for Ninar for coming on. That was really interesting. And as Ed mentioned, he and I have no place in talking about what it's like being gay in Thailand. So it is very good to hear from someone who knows what it's all about. So it'll be interesting to watch this issue unfold as we go forward, and hopefully all the best things happen.
Yeah. So I mentioned in the interview that I would like to have Ninar back, after we see what happens with these same-sex marriage bills that are in the Thai Parliament right now. So, we can get an update on the status of the struggle.
Right on. All right, let's shake things up a bit with some word association this week. This is a fairly new feature where one of us says 3 words or phrases, and the other guy replies with the first thing that comes into his head. You can play along at home, too. So, Ed, this week it's your turn to throw some terms my way. So, what do you got for me?
I've got 3 terms for you.
Right.
I'm gonna go nice first, and this might be a little bit off the wall, but I think I think you'll know what I'm talking about. So, here's my first word. You ready?
All right, go.
Tawandang.
Sausages.
Oh, that's not bad. To our listeners who don't know, Tawandang is a very unusual place. It's a big, what would you call it? It's a restaurant, but it has a brewery. So it's on Rama 3. It's like a restaurant brewery, but it also has essentially a stage with almost like a vaudeville act going on. It's really it's like an old school restaurant theater almost.
I always describe it as a German beer hall filtered through Thai culture. It's like a huge building, and they've got great craft beer that's cheap. They've got like Isan music up on stage. They got really good like traditional Thai food like lap mu and mo ping and all these things.
But they do have sausages.
They do have sausages, and I thought of sausages because whenever I think of Tawandang, the first thing I think of is German beer hall. So I just thought of sausages. That's the first thing that popped into my head. I almost said Lederhosen, but I thought that was a bit too weird.
Well, anyone who lives in Bangkok who has not been to Tawandang, you need to get over there because it's pretty unusual. It's something worth checking out.
Great place.
All right, you ready for the second word or phrase?
I am. Yeah, go.
Okay, bank book.
Annoying as hell.
Okay,
I didn't even think about that one. Yeah, bank or book bank, right? What they
book
say,
bank, whatever savings. I think in the U.S. we would call it like a savings book. I think is what we would call it.
Well, it's hard to remember what we called it because they haven't been used in the U.S. since 1982.
That's correct. I do remember them when I was a kid, though. I clearly remember those book banks. In a way, this was kind of a softball I was setting up for Greg to crush out of the stadium because I knew that he would hate the concept of the bank book, because both Greg and I for years have been lamenting Thai banks' reliance on these stupid books that should have no value, but for some reason it's like the most important thing in your life.
Yeah, it's one step below your passport in terms of proving you're a real person to a bank.
Yeah, it's like if you don't have your book, it's like you can't do anything.
And you know what'll make you hate them even more is doing what I did and losing yours, and then having to go to the police station to fill out a police report about why you lost your stupid book that you never used and has been sitting in a drawer for 12 years.
That's right. So you can't just go to the bank and say, "Hey, I lost it. Like I need a new one." You can't do that. You have to file a police report and then bring that to the bank, and then they'll give you a new one.
Right.
And plus you have to do that at the actual branch you opened your account. You can't go to some other branch, like for the actual bank. You have to go to the specific place where you opened the account.
Don't get me started, man. My blood pressure's starting to go.
All right. Well, it's going to keep going higher, I think. But okay, you ready for concept number 3?
Number 3, go.
Grab.
Oh, fuck.
He's going to explode. Just back away from the microphone. Back away from the microphone.
Oh, yeah, that's the only word I can think of. I struggle with them almost daily. They took over when Uber moved out of Southeast Asia. It sold its operation to Grab Taxi, which then became Grab, which is basically an Uber clone. But they just have totally dropped the ball in terms of customer service, customer satisfaction, and I am certainly not the only one to complain about it.
I've heard many, many complaints about Grab. You know, in a way, it's a textbook example of the advantage of competition, because I used both Uber and Grab before, Grab bought out Uber, and sometimes I had issues, but in general, I thought they were both good.
They used to be okay. I always thought Uber was far, far superior. But Grab used to be a decent second alternative. But when Uber left, I think there's a real economic study to be had here on the sort of the benefits of market competition. Because when there's no one else to compete with, they just do whatever the hell they want, and they just do not seem to care.
Agreed. I have had some good Grab experiences in the last couple of weeks, but I've had a couple bad ones, and I know I don't want to get you like too into this.
Hulk smash. No, I will say when Grab works, it's great. It's fantastic. The drivers are wonderful. They're nice. They show up on time. They drive safely and greatly, and when it works. But a lot of times it doesn't work. Either the driver cancels, or the app quits, or they can't find you anyone or something. And it's
like a weirdly large number of Grab drivers like agree to pick you up, come close to where you live, and then bail. Like, it's happened to me. Like, it doesn't make sense. I can see the guy on the map. He's near my house, and then he cancels.
Yeah, and I'm downstairs with my kid and my backpack and his backpack and some school supplies, and then it says, finding you another thing, and it's going to be 20 more minutes. Oh, man, yeah, just, ooh.
All right,
good
relax.
One,
take a deep breath. Take a deep
Good
breath.
one for getting my heart rate up.
Okay, so as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Sam Decker for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Sam?
Yeah, well, Sam and I traded a few messages back and forth, and turns out he has a pretty simple story, almost too simple, Ed. Now, Sam says he came to Bangkok and thought it would be a nice place to hang out, so he quit his job as a high school principal in the Bronx and moved here. Well, that didn't sit well with me, so I did a little bit of digging, and I found out that's only half the story. Because, of course, Ed, you have seen the classic 1990 movie Class of 1999, starring Malcolm McDowell, Stacy Keach, and Pam Grier, wherein schools in New York have gotten so bad that only sadistic robot teachers can handle the students.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Who hasn't seen that?
It's a classic.
Well, I found out that Sam started his teaching career in 1999 in New York, eventually moving up to principal with a suspiciously high record of student achievements. Now, everyone knows that the Bronx is a rough and tumble place, and kids from the Bronx are a tough bunch. So obviously, the only conclusion that I could come to is that Sam is a cyborg who has kept his students in line with fear and has retired to Thailand, where oil and maintenance costs are far cheaper than they are in the U.S.
Very, very suspicious.
Well, Sam, thanks for the support, sir. But we are on to you. We're watching you, buddy. And also,
No doubt.
I may have watched too many movies.
There's no doubt about that. A big thanks to Sam and all of our patrons out there. As everyone knows, we don't run ads. We don't have sponsors. So we really, really do appreciate the support we get. Random fact, all of our patrons actually smell like cookies.
True story.
And if you want to get in touch with us, we are at Bangkok Podcast on Facebook and Twitter, or you can send us a message via the contact form on BangkokPodcast.com, or just BangkokPodcast@gmail.com. We always write back. If you write it, we will answer it.
Yeah, you can also find us on the Line app, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter if you want, where I am BKK Greg. Thank you very much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week. Really?
So now Pop-Tarts are cheap, and so they literally must have switched. They must be making them in Thailand now.
I love Pop-Tarts, but I just can't get over the fact that they're just 100% sugar and totally crap. So
No doubt.
I don't have them.
No doubt.
All right.